Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar underlines need for a strong and consistent global order, calls for a strong and a fair United Nations. US Intelligence Chief Tulsi Gabbard says Trump's America First policy doesn't mean America alone. Terms PM Modi's visit to US was reconnection of two old friends. US President Donald Trump set to hold talks with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin over phone, says many elements of a peace agreement in Ukraine have been agreed. Peace in Gaza shattered, over 330 reportedly killed in Israeli strikes. Israel blames action on Hamas's refusal to release remaining hostages. NASA astronauts Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore begin journey to Earth on SpaceX Dragon capsule after being stranded on ISS for months. The 10th edition of Raisina Dialogue continues in New Delhi. The second day deliberations began with a session titled Thrones and Thorns, Defending the Integrity of Nations. Participating in the discussions, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar stressed the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity, calling it a vital principle and a bedrock of global rules.
After the Second World War, the longest standing illegal, I would say, presence, occupation of a territory by another country pertains to India. What we saw in Kashmir. Now, we went to the UN. What was an invasion was made into a dispute. So, the attacker and the victim were put on par. Who were the culpable parties? UK, Canada, Belgium, Australia, USA. We speak today of political interference. When the West goes out into other countries, it's apparently in pursuance of democratic freedoms. When other countries come into the West, it seems to have a very malign intention.
Further, Dr. Jaishankar underlined the need of a strong as well as a fair UN, adding that a strong global order must have some basic consistency of standards.
We need, if to have an order, there must be fairness. We need a strong UN, but a strong UN requires a fair UN. A strong, a global order must have some, some basic consistency of standards. We have military coups to our east in Myanmar. They are no-no. We have them even more regularly to the west. You know where? They seem to be okay. So I think it's important to audit the working of the world for the last 8 decades and be honest about it, and to understand today that the balances, the shareholdings in the world have changed. We need a different conversation.
And Dr. Jaishankar said the idea of a multipolar world is concerned to think how to become a leading power at some point of time.
I think the idea of a multipolar world, and where India itself is concerned to think of how to become a leading power at some point of time. I think these are the global South character, the democratic character, the adapting long view aspect, and a multipolar world towards which we are working. I think if you keep these in mind, a lot of what we do in different situations would make sense.
And the United States Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard delivered the keynote address at the ongoing Raisina Dialogue 2025 in New Delhi. Gabbard highlighted the strong partnership between India and the United States, noting that it has endured for decades.
It's been a constructive few days where I've been engaging with our Indian counterparts The partnership between our two countries has been strong for decades, and under the leadership of two great leaders and true great friends, President Trump and Prime Minister Modi, and rooted in our shared values of peace and freedom, security and prosperity, I'm confident that this partnership and friendship between our two nations and our leaders will continue to grow and strengthen.
And Gabbard emphasized that America first does not mean America alone.
So just as President Trump is committed to America first, putting the safety, security, and freedom of the American people at the forefront of his policies and his decisions, Prime Minister Modi is committed to India first. Prime Minister Luxon is committed to New Zealand first. This is the expectation of any leader's commitment to their people, to serve them, to put their interests at the forefront of their decisions. But this should not be misunderstood to mean that America first is America alone. The relationships that we build together are critical to advance our mutual interests.
And US President Donald Trump said to hold talks with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin over phone and said many elements of a peace agreement in Ukraine have been agreed. Trump said he would speak to Russia's Putin on Tuesday morning about ending the Ukraine conflict with territorial concessions by Kyiv and control of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Trump has been trying to win Putin's support for a 30-day ceasefire proposal that Ukraine accepted last week as both sides traded heavy aerial strikes early on Monday and Russia moved closer to ejecting Ukrainian forces from their months-old foothold in the western Russian region of Kursk. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told a regular briefing on Monday that Trump and Putin would discuss a power plant on the border of Russia and Ukraine. And Israel's military said it conducted strikes on Hamas targets in the Palestinian enclave as explosions were heard over Gaza City in the early hours of Tuesday. Over 330 people were killed and over 100 wounded in the strikes. Israel stated that the recent strikes on Gaza are a response to Hamas's repeated refusal to release hostages as well as rejection of all ceasefire proposals. The military mentioned that the Home Command has ordered restrictions on civilian activity near the Gaza Strip following airstrikes. Schools will also be closed in areas near the Gaza Strip on Tuesday. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office on Tuesday stated that Netanyahu instructed the military to take strong action following the group's refusal to release hostages and its rejection of ceasefire proposals. All right, we'll go across live to Lok Sabha now. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is speaking.
सबका प्रयास का यही साक्षात स्वरूप है। ये जनता जनार्दन के संकल्पों के लिए, जनता जनार्दन की श्रद्धा से प्रेरित महाकुंभ था। आदरणीय अध्यक्ष जी, महाकुंभ में हमने हमारी राष्ट्रीय चेतना के जागरण के विराट दर्शन किए हैं। ये जो राष्ट्रीय चेतना है, ये जो राष्ट्र को नए संकल्पों की तरफ ले जाती है, ये नए संकल्पों की सिद्धि के लिए प्रेरित करती है। महाकुंभ ने उन शंकाओं आशंकाओं को भी उचित जवाब दिया है जो हमारे सामर्थ्य को लेकर कुछ लोगों के मन में रहती है। अध्यक्ष जी, पिछले वर्ष अयोध्या के राम मंदिर प्राण प्रतिष्ठा समारोह में हम सभी ने ये महसूस किया था कि कैसे देश अगले 1000 वर्षों के लिए तैयार हो रहा है। इसके ठीक 1 साल बाद महाकुंभ के इस आयोजन ने हम सभी के इस विचार को और दृढ़ किया है। देश की ये सामूहिक चेतना देश का सामर्थ्य बताती है। किसी भी राष्ट्र के जीवन में मानव जीवन के इतिहास में भी अनेक ऐसे मोड़ आते हैं जो सदियों के लिए, आने वाली पीढ़ियों के लिए उदाहरण बन जाते हैं। हमारे देश के इतिहास में भी ऐसे पल आए हैं जिन्होंने देश को नई दिशा दी, देश को झकझोर कर जागृत कर दिया। जैसे भक्ति आंदोलन के कालखंड में हमने देखा कैसे देश के कोने कोने में आध्यात्मिक चेतना उभरी। स्वामी विवेकानंद जी ने शिकागो में एक सदी पहले जो भाषण दिया, वो भारत की आध्यात्मिक चेतना का जयघोष था। उसने भारतीयों के आत्मसम्मान को जगा दिया था। हमारी आजादी के आंदोलन में भी अनेक ऐसे पड़ाव आए हैं। 1857 का स्वातंत्र संग्राम हो, वीर भगत सिंह की शहादत का समय हो, नेताजी सुभाष बाबू का दिल्ली चलो का जयघोष हो, गांधी जी का दांडी मार्च हो, ऐसे ही पड़ावों से प्रेरणा पाकर भारत ने आजादी हासिल की। मैं प्रयागराज महाकुंभ को भी ऐसे ही एक अहम पड़ाव के रूप में देखता हूं, जिसमें जागरूक होते हुए देश का प्रतिबिंब नजर आता है। अध्यक्ष जी, हमने करीब 1.5 महीने तक भारत में महाकुंभ का उत्साह देखा, उमंग को अनुभव किया। कैसे सुविधा असुविधा की चिंता से ऊपर उठते हुए कोटि कोटि श्रद्धालु श्रद्धा भाव से जुटे, ये हमारी बहुत बड़ी ताकत है। लेकिन ये उमंग, ये उत्साह सिर्फ यहीं तक सीमित नहीं था। बीते हफ्ते मैं मॉरिशस में था। मैं त्रिवेणी से, प्रयागराज से महाकुंभ के समय का पावन जल लेकर गया था। जब उस पवित्र जल को मॉरिशस के गंगा तालाब में अर्पित किया गया, तो वहां जो श्रद्धा का, आस्था का, उत्सव का माहौल था, वो देखते ही बनता था। ये दिखाता है कि आज हमारी परंपरा, हमारी संस्कृति, हमारे संस्कारों को आत्मसात करने की, उन्हें सेलिब्रेट करने की भावना कितनी प्रबल हो रही है। अध्यक्ष जी, मैं ये भी देख रहा हूं कि पीढ़ी दर पीढ़ी हमारे संस्कारों के आगे बढ़ने का जो क्रम है, वो भी कितनी सहजता से आगे बढ़ रहा है। आप देखिए, जो हमारी मॉडर्न युवा पीढ़ी है, ये कितने श्रद्धा भाव से महाकुंभ से जुड़े रहे, दूसरे उत्सवों से जुड़े रहे हैं। आज भारत का युवा अपनी परंपरा, अपनी आस्था, अपनी श्रद्धा को गर्व के साथ अपना रहा है। अध्यक्ष जी, जब एक समाज की भावनाओं में अपनी विरासत पर गर्व का भाव बढ़ता है, तो हम ऐसी ही भव्य प्रेरक तस्वीरें देखते हैं जो हमने महाकुंभ के दौरान देखी। इससे आपसी भाईचारा बढ़ता है और ये आत्मविश्वास बढ़ता है कि एक देश के रूप में हम बड़े लक्ष्यों को प्राप्त कर सकते हैं। अपनी परंपराओं से, अपनी आस्था से, अपनी विरासत से जुड़ने की ये भावना आज के भारत की बहुत बड़ी पूंजी है। अध्यक्ष जी, महाकुंभ से अनेक अमृत निकले हैं। एकता का अमृत इसका बहुत पवित्र प्रसाद है। महाकुंभ ऐसा आयोजन रहा जिसमें देश के हर क्षेत्र से, हर एक कोने से आए लोग एक हो गए। लोग अहम त्याग कर वयम के भाव से, मैं नहीं हम की भावना से प्रयागराज में जुटे। अलग अलग राज्यों से लोग आकर पवित्र त्रिवेणी का हिस्सा बने। जब अलग अलग क्षेत्रों से आए करोड़ों करोड़ों लोग राष्ट्रीयता के भाव को मजबूती देते हैं तो देश की एकता बढ़ती है। जब अलग अलग भाषा बोलियां बोलने वाले लोग संगम तट पर हर हर गंगे का उद्घोष करते हैं तो एक भारत श्रेष्ठ भारत की झलक दिखती है। एकता की भावना बढ़ती है। महाकुंभ में हमने देखा है कि वहां छोटे बड़े का कोई भेद नहीं था। ये भारत का बहुत बड़ा सामर्थ्य है। ये दिखाता है कि एकता का अद्भुत तत्व हमारे भीतर रचा बसा हुआ है। हमारी एकता का सामर्थ्य इतना है कि वो भेदने के सारे प्रयासों को भी भेद देता है। एकता की यही भावना भारतीयों का बहुत बड़ा सौभाग्य है। आज पूरे विश्व में जो बिखराव की स्थितियां हैं, उस दौर में एकजुटता का ये विराट प्रदर्शन हमारी बहुत बड़ी ताकत है। अनेकता में एकता भारत की विशेषता है। ये हम हमेशा कहते आए हैं, ये हमने हमेशा महसूस किया है और इसी के विराट रूप का अनुभव हमने प्रयागराज महाकुंभ में किया है। हमारा दायित्व है कि अनेकता में एकता की इसी विशेषता को हम निरंतर समृद्ध करते रहें। अध्यक्ष जी, महाकुंभ से हमें अनेक प्रेरणाएं भी मिली हैं। हमारे देश में इतनी सारी छोटी बड़ी नदियां हैं। कई नदियां ऐसी हैं जिन पर संकट भी आ रहा है। कुंभ से प्रेरणा लेते हुए हमें नदी उत्सव की परंपरा को नया विस्तार देना होगा। इस बारे में हमें जरूर सोचना चाहिए। इससे वर्तमान पीढ़ी को पानी का महत्व समझ आएगा, नदियों की साफ सफाई को बल मिलेगा, नदियों की रक्षा होगी। अध्यक्ष जी, मुझे विश्वास है कि महाकुंभ से निकला अमृत हमारे संकल्पों की सिद्धि का बहुत ही मजबूत माध्यम बनेगा। मैं एक बार फिर महाकुंभ के आयोजन से जुड़े प्रत्येक व्यक्ति की सराहना करता हूं। देश के सभी श्रद्धालुओं को नमन करता हूं। सदन की तरफ से अपनी शुभकामनाएं देता हूं।
नियम 372 एक मिनट, नियम 372 के तहत।
All right, we are getting you these live visuals from the Parliament where Prime Minister Narendra Modi was speaking at the lower house of the Parliament. He talked about Mahakumbh Mela in Prayagraj, Pran Pratishtha of Ram Temple in Ayodhya, saying that this shows the unity of the people of India. He also talked about his Mauritius visit and said that he had taken the holy water of Ma Ganga, Ganges, to Mauritius too. He hailed India's youth, saying youth of India is embracing its tradition, customs with pride. Mahakumbh was an event in which people from every region and every corner of the country participated, and Mahakumbh witnessed no distinction. So this was primarily the gist of what he said, and we'll have a detailed story in our subsequent bulletins. Moving on, The European Union led the way as donors on Monday pledged 5.8 billion euros in aid for Syria at a conference in Brussels. However, donation was down on the 7.5 billion promised overall at the conference last year. EU Commissioner for the Mediterranean Dubravka Suisa said that this money should be used for early recovery for the benefit of all Syrian citizens. The conference, 9th Brussels conference, standing with Syria, meeting the needs for a successful transition, aimed at mobilizing international support for an inclusive, peaceful transition and generate pledges for humanitarian and non-humanitarian assistance.
We just closed Syrian pledging conference. This was 9th conference in a row. It was very successful. We pledged a lot of money. Better to say it is 5.8 billion euro, out of which there is 4.2 in grants and only 1.6 in loans. I think this is good for the recovery, for the early recovery of Syria. And I also hope that Syrian authorities, who were represented by their Minister of Foreign Affairs, can be satisfied, and this money could and should be used for their early recovery and for the benefit of all Syrian citizens. We just closed Syrian pledge.
Meanwhile, Pentagon said on Monday that there have been dozens of military casualties so far in Yemen. U.S. Defense Department spokesman Sean Parnell says the U.S. military will carry out unrelenting strikes against Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels until achieving its objective. Responding to the Houthi movement's threat to international shipping, the U.S. launched a new wave of airstrikes on Saturday.
Thanks for the opportunity to provide. The initial wave of strikes hit over 30 targets at multiple locations, degrading a variety of Houthi capabilities. These included terrorist training sites, unmanned aerial vehicle infrastructure, weapons manufacturing capabilities, and weapons storage facilities. It also included a number of command and control centers, including a terrorist compound where we know several senior Houthi unmanned aerial vehicle experts were located. On Sunday, strike operations continued against additional headquarters locations, weapons storage facilities, as well as detection capabilities that have been used to threaten maritime shipping in the past. Today, the operation continues, and it will continue in the coming days until we achieve the President's objectives.
Meanwhile, President Donald Trump declared Monday he will hold Iran directly responsible for any future attacks by Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels who have targeted U.S. and other foreign ships in the Red Sea. Trump said that every shot fired by the Houthis will be looked upon from this point forward as being a shot fired from the weapons and leadership of Iran, and Iran will be held responsible and suffer the consequences. Congo M23 rebels will no longer join peace talks in Angola on Tuesday. The group said it would be sending a delegation to Angola's capital Luanda on Tuesday, one day after Congo confirmed its participation, reversing the government's long-standing vow not to negotiate with the rebels. Here's more.
The M23 rebel group behind the latest flare-up of violence in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo has pulled out of peace talks a day before they were due to start in Angola. The decision by the rebel group followed European Union sanctions over 3 senior Rwandan military officials, 5 senior leaders of the M23, and a gold refinery announced earlier on Monday. The DRC government alleges that the rebel group has Rwandan government support. Tuesday's talks would have marked the first meeting between the Congolese government and the rebel movement that President Felix Tshisekedi has referred to as terrorist and refused to engage with. Meanwhile, the Rwandan government announced its decision to sever diplomatic relations with Belgium on Monday and gave Belgian diplomats 48 hours to leave the country. Belgium has labelled Rwanda's decision disproportionate.
Rwanda's concern is that we are colonized by a small country, similar in size to Rwanda itself, and they want to divide us because of that. I mean Belgium. I want to give them a warning. Belgium has caused significant harm to Rwanda even in history, 30 years ago, and they continue to follow and interfere with us. We warned them before, and we are prepared to warn them again.
Brussels has been leading calls for European nations to sanction Rwanda over its support for the M23 rebel group, but Rwanda has long denied claims that it supports arms, fights alongside and trains M23. Anamika Pandey, DD India.
And a pair of astronauts stranded in space for more than 9 months were finally headed home Tuesday after their capsule undocked from the International Space Station. The SpaceX craft carrying Butch Wilmore and Sunita Williams detached from the orbital outpost at 0505 GMT, ending their prolonged mission that has captivated global attention. The NASA duo are joined on board by American Nick Hague and Russian cosmonaut Alexander Gorbunov. The crew are now settling in for the 17-hour journey back to Earth and were given permission to change from the spacesuits into more comfortable clothes. Wilmore and Williams flew to the orbital lab in June last year on what was supposed to be a day-long round trip to test out Boeing's Starliner on its first crewed flight. But the spaceship developed propulsion problems and was deemed unfit to fly them back, instead returning empty. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India Live, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Abhishek Mahajan from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.